Convener, would you present the report, please?
I will indeed. Rosie Frew, 571. Moderator. The Presbytery Mission Plan Act was the big ticket item at last year's General Assembly, and it has been front and centre ever since. Reflecting on my Assembly experience with the Faith Nurture Forum early last June, I made 3 points. Firstly, we have promised much, and now we must deliver. Secondly, it's a mission plan. Mission is at the heart of it. The 5 marks of mission underpin it. And thirdly, every area of the work of the Forum is a part of this. Everything we do supports and enables it. Last year, we heard that we need inspiring leaders to take the church forward, both lay and ordained. Well-resourced presbyteries and congregations. Support for the local from the centre. Integrity in the planning process. Imagination and creativity. A phrase used then was, it's all about resourcing resourcefulness. As a forum, we provide a focus on discipleship, and we're working on an integrated learning programme. We oversee discernment, assessment and training for those who will be called to minister in ways that are changing and challenging and innovative. We give support and encouragement to those in ministry in these changing and challenging times. All the resources of Ascend, of pastoral support. And I know that support is pragmatic, personal, specific, and helpful in real and meaningful ways. We help resource for mission and worship, new ways of being church, pioneering intergenerational work, the Under 40s programme. We provide specialist resources, priority areas, interim and transition ministry, specialist chaplaincies, and the particular skills of the diaconate and ministries development staff, our MDS. We give assistance with presbytery planning, and I'll come to that in a moment. In all this, we do not work alone in a silo. We work with the Principal Clerk, the Law Department, the Treasurer's Department, the Assembly Trustees, the General Trustees, the Faith Impact Forum, other committees of the Church, the presbyteries, those in ministry and congregations. We work with all these different folk, listen to them, and what we hear helps shape our thinking. So, the Presbytery Mission Plan Act, an act that puts mission at the heart and is predicated on the affordability and availability of ministry resource. Last year, I shared some figures with the Assembly and went on to say that we are at breaking point, that we're draining the resources of the church, people, morale, finance. So here's this year's update. As at the April payroll, we have 653 parish ministers in a charge, which includes 2 deaf ministry posts and 13 transition or interim ministers. We have 3 pioneer ministry posts, 131 ministries development staff, that is 102 full-time equivalent. Currently, there are 331 vacant charges, including 38 guardianships, and therefore the need for 331 interim moderators. We have 163 locums. And here's the statistic. 45% of ministers are or will be over 65 in the next 5 years. This is why we need presbytery mission planning. Conveners and forums don't often get fan mail. But last May, we received so much support and affirmation that we knew that although what lay ahead of us was hard, it was right. There was gratitude that we were finally addressing the elephant in the room. And there was a real excitement about doing a new thing, doing church and mission in a new way. We promised much, and we knew we had to deliver. Soon after last year's assembly, we reformed the Presbytery Planning Task Group into the Presbytery Mission Plan Implementation Group, affectionately known as PIMPIG. Karen Campbell, our vice-convener, took on the convenership. We wanted to make a statement that we were taking this seriously, giving it the highest priority. 6 members of the forum sit on PIMPIG, and we invited 6 co-opted members to support us in this key piece of work until December 2022. 6 respected, innovative people with wide experience. Angus Matheson is the senior staff member. We owe the most enormous debt of gratitude to this team of people who have undertaken to work with every presbytery to facilitate the work on mission planning. And I've asked some of them to share their experience.
The Church of Scotland is presently facing a range of challenges, the likes of which have not been seen before in our lifetimes. Questions around our buildings, challenges around how to deploy the various ministries, and all of it that we might in the end be more missional. So this is the work of the Presbytery Mission Planning Group. Sheena, you've been on it. How's it been for you so far?
Yeah, I mean, I came up in after PIMPIG had been up and running for a few months, and so when I really didn't know what to expect when I came in, but I was instantly struck by the amount of work that had already been done by various of the presbyteries and their planning groups, and just been really quite inspiring to see the different ways that presbyteries have gone about the process, and the contrast from a very small presbytery that's been given a very small number of ministries to work with versus a much bigger presbytery with dozens of ministries, dozens of buildings to be working out what to do with. So and just to see how the groups have approached that, it's been really quite inspiring.
Yes, what strikes me is it's fine for me, I'm retired from full-time work, but I'm surrounded by folk like yourselves in full-time ministry and demanding both at a national level, regional and presbyteries, right down to congregational level, and elders too who are doing it along with full-time occupations. And people are finding the time to rise to the challenge of this. I just find it awesome.
I mean, I see that as well, Murdo, absolutely. And the commitment level's been phenomenal. I think too what I've enjoyed about the process is meeting people from across the country. Most often we're concerned locally, but I've been meeting folks the length and breadth of the country and being inspired by the creativity of their thinking, the rising to the challenge. So yeah, really encouraging, but that should not disguise the fact that this has been tough. It's been tough for us on the national body, but my goodness, for people in presbyteries and congregations, trying to get through this, really difficult. Have you sensed that from folk?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about ministries, so we're talking about people. We're talking about buildings, which people have a real emotional connection with. And so to be faced with a task of trying to almost rationalise all of that, really hardened people. But I think, for the most part, people have been understanding of all of that and sensitive to the kind of emotional connection that we have with our buildings, with our ministries, and to see the care that's been taken around that as well has been really heartwarming.
Yeah. I think on a positive though, the fact that we're all doing this together at the same time, a whole church, and I think the sense of togetherness is important. As is a deadline, it's time limited. We need to get this done by the end of December, and I think that's been good and helpful for us all in working towards a common goal.
You just reminded us there, Murdo, that yeah, this has to get done. We've got half a year left. But, you know, a part of me thinks, okay, it's tight, it's challenging, but let's get the job done so that we can be back to doing what the church is supposed to be all about and put mission right at the heart of it all.
Absolutely.
It's good to hear such positivity because, let's be honest, it has not been an easy 12 months. We've often talked about the perfect storm of pandemic, presbytery restructuring and presbytery mission planning. There has been great uncertainty. There has been hurt. There are still some very big and painful decisions to be made. And we have made mistakes. These are detailed in our supplementary report. Last year, we apologised for a mix-up over posts in England. That was rectified following the General Assembly, but because we're dealing with either full-time or half-time posts, the rounding of figures resulted in our ministry's total going up by 0.5 to 601.5. Later in the year, we were alerted to an inconsistency in the way weightings were applied to the new Presbytery of Aberdeen and Shetland, Urban and Island. And that resulted in 4 additional posts being allocated to that presbytery. We did not think it fair to completely recalculate and take posts away from other presbyteries. Now, these are not figures cast in stone. Firstly, the overall ministry's number is reviewed annually by the Assembly trustees. The affordability and availability. Our forum responsibility is for the distribution. And in our report, we have committed to doing further work on weightings and how they relate to what will be our new presbytery structure. We've also discovered that we have to apologise for an oversight that has recently come to light. The failure to inform the General Assembly and the presbyteries of Gordon, Jedburgh and Lothian of a change in weightings when work was being done by the Ministry's Council on advisory figures in 2017. Gordon and Jedburgh changing from a weighting of 2 down to 1.5, and Lothian rising from 1 to 1.25. We used these amended weightings in good faith last year, unaware that they had not been approved. The sheer enormity of what we are doing struck home the day I looked at the vacancy list, and there were only 3. And that was when it felt very real and, being honest, very scary. I've used the metaphor of the butterfly throughout my time as convener. We're currently living in an in-between world, in between an old system and a new system, and it's like being in a chrysalis, a dark and difficult place of transformation before the beauty of the butterfly emerges. This time of transition has been especially tough for our probationers and those in familiarisation placements, as they seek to discern where God is calling them to serve. Since January, we have been working alongside them and their presbyteries to ensure there are creative opportunities for service at the end of the probation period and that none are disadvantaged financially. I appreciate this is also an unsettling time for those feeling called to move on. However, as plans are approved in the coming months and exceptional calls granted, more and more vacancies will be advertised. Let me say a bit about recruitment. There is a perception that we have too many ministers, when nothing could be further from the truth, that we're cutting back, when in fact we're forward planning. As I mentioned earlier, we are aware of the number of ministers who will be considering retirement in the next few years. We will need more ministers. So if you have been putting feelings of call to the back of your mind, if believing that you are not needed has put the brakes on taking time to think, to pray, to consider putting yourself forward for discernment, please, we need inspiring leaders, folk with a heart for ministry and mission to take the church forward. The church you may feel you're being called to serve will be in a far better place. We're going through the inevitable pain of surgery before good health can be restored. We're also aware of other impediments that deter people from putting themselves forward. The length of time it takes to train, and the financial burden placed on the family who journey alongside. We're looking at new options that include fast-track training and different pathways, as detailed in the report of the Assembly Trustees. Since the Faith Nurture Forum came into being on the 1st of January 2020, we have met only once in person, and once in person with the Assembly Trustees and the Faith Impact Forum. Our second meeting was on the day the church offices were closed by COVID and we were sent home. Meeting online has enabled us to work in a new way. I've spoken before about being able to be nimble and fleet of foot. And I'm very grateful to members of the Forum and to all the staff who support us for hard work and good humour, for creativity and understanding, for putting mission at the heart of all we do. And I'm very grateful to all who support and enable our wide range of work across Scotland and beyond. I'm particularly indebted to Karen, my vice-convener. We've made good use of Teams over the past 2 and a bit years. She has been a wonderful support and a good friend. Moderator, I present the report with the exception of Section 7 and the supplementary report of the Faith Nurture Forum. And since I'm not a commissioner, I ask the Principal Clerk to move the deliverances.
Moderator, I so move.
Seconded.
Thank you, Convener. Donald?
Moderator, in view of the time of day, I wonder if the General Assembly might agree to suspend or to alter Standing Order number 95, and rather than allowing that all speeches can run to 5 minutes, that we might agree to limit that to 3.
Yes, and I think that has to be done robustly, so you will know. Can I call on Roderick Graham, please, number 389, and then Katrina Templeton to stand by to speak.
Moderator Roderick Graham, 389. I want to refer to section 1410 of the report. It doesn't feature in any of the deliverances, and I didn't want to miss this opportunity to thank the Forum and particularly the Priority Areas Committee for allowing my congregations and my community to have the huge privilege and pleasure of welcoming one of the young adult volunteers from the PCUSA into our midst in September. The YAV has not only given great benefit to the congregation and great blessing to the community, but she's also at times challenged us as to why we do things and why we do things in a particular way. And that has been of great benefit both to myself, to the rest of my ministry team, and indeed to the congregations. I just wanted to make sure that the Assembly didn't miss that this is happening, and that it's happening, dare I say, north of the Central Belt in Dundee. And also just to ask the convener, or perhaps the priority areas people, I understand this is a 3-year programme, and I just wanted to know where we were in terms of recruitment for this coming batch. Not that I'm trying to get rid of my current YAV, but it would be useful to know just where we are with the next one. And also if we've perhaps learned some lessons over the difficulties that all of the YAVs had in obtaining visas last summer, which delayed them. And I know that caused all of the YAVs some anxiety and concern. So it was really just a comment, moderator, and a brief question about where we are in the recruitment process for the new session, and just to reassure me perhaps that attention had been paid to the past difficulties on the visa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moderator, I've just been given the answer. So we are lining up 3, hoping to recruit another 4. So the process is going forward. And yeah, and good to get that really positive feedback. So that makes us feel really good. It makes it worthwhile to have invested the time and the effort in these young people and what they bring to us in Scotland. So thank you.
Thank you. Katrina Templeton, please. 149, and would Matthew Phillip please stand by? Number 628.
So, Katrina Templeton, 149. I'm an elder with the Ayrshire Mission for the Deaf, and my questions are relating to section 10.1. So, in Scotland, we have 3 ministers for the deaf, and they go from Shetland all the way down to the borders. Right now, 2 posts are filled. The Edinburgh one has been vacant since 2018. But in Glasgow right now, the minister's actually been on long-term sick leave on and off for the last 3 or 4 years. What we are having trouble with is finding people to do who is responsible for pulpit supply, for pastoral support, who pays for the interpreter. The Glasgow Church covers 11 presbyteries for pastoral support, and it has 5 venues for where the church meets. And right now, there seems to be money to deal with the Glasgow Presbytery, but in Kilmarnock we've got people who want to do the pulpit supply, but we don't have anybody to interpret. So we're just wondering who is actually responsible for the supply costs of pulpits, pastoral care, and that kind of thing. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you. You gave me advance notice of this question, so I've been able to get the answers. So Darren Golby is our staff member with responsibility for this area of work. There are 3 ministry posts for the deaf congregations based in Aberdeen, Edinburgh and Glasgow. However, each also has a regional remit. I can tell you that there was a meeting with Kilmarnock and Glasgow Presbyteries in February to discuss how we're able to provide cover now and in the future, as the history of provision in Ayrshire and the West region is unclear and needs revisiting. It was agreed that this would be addressed when the Glasgow Minister is back at work, which will hopefully be very soon, as his knowledge of the need and provision in the West is essential, as is his input on how we might revise the provision. So this remains a live agenda item, and you've just made it more live with your contribution. I can also say that the Edinburgh Post has recently been updated to include a national remit, where it is anticipated to work collaboratively with all the post holders. Unfortunately, we weren't able to appoint when we interviewed 2 weeks ago, but we're planning to re-advertise this post in the next week. Darren is also working with the Principal Clerk's Office and the Presbyteries of Edinburgh, Aberdeen and Glasgow to revise and update the Deaf Ministry legislation, and this includes the Act and regulations, and it's anticipated that these revisions will be brought to the General Assembly next year. I hope that gives you some reassurance that it's very much happening, maybe not quite as quickly as you want.
people willing to preach, we cannot do anything because we've got no interpreters. So
we're hearing that, and,
okay.
and the presbytery clerks and Darren are hearing that as well, so thank you.
Thank you, Catriona. Matthew Phillip, and would David Slater, 213, stand by to speak?
Thank you, Moderator. Matthew Phillip, 628. Moderator, I note that in section 2.9 and section 14.11 in the report, there are mentions of engaging with the under-40s and how to ensure that they are included in the life of the church. I would like to ask the convener what guidance has been given to presbyteries about engaging with the under-40s in terms of how they can get involved at a presbytery level within the setup of the church. And also to ask the convener, given that pretty much all of the restrictions in terms of COVID have now been lifted, will the Faith Nurture Forum, in partnership with the Under-40s Task Group, be able to start planning and organising these residential events for the under-40s, similar to the events that were planned before the pandemic? Thank you.
Okay, in June, the intergenerational work will be reporting, and there will be liaison with the presbyteries at that time as well. You heard from Barry Hughes earlier, and one of the video clips was Barry, who was reporting on the work that's being done in this area as well. So it is very much to the forefront. We've said that before, but it is very much to the forefront of the work of the church. And again, it's very much a live issue. And that, working with the presbyteries, again, is very much a part of it. A lot was in place before COVID struck, and so we're hoping to get that put back in place now. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. David Slater, and would Amanda McCorry please stand by to speak?
Moderator, Dave Slater, 213. And apologies to the convener not having given advance notice of this question. I refer to section 4.13 regarding the study leave scheme, which tells us that the training task group of the Ministries' Council agreed this reduction in the cap up to which ministers can save up their time and their funds. The Education and Training Implementation Group endorsed that, and the Faith Nurture Forum approved that. Is that something that doesn't need to come for General Assembly approval, and that's just information there? I don't see a section of deliverance relating to it, which is why I asked to speak at this point. And if I can ask some supplementary questions, I don't know if you want me to wait while you respond to that.
I can respond quite quickly. It is just for your information that it is a decision of all the bodies that you have said, but the final approval came from Faith Nurture.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that some ministers perhaps don't always use all their allocation, but I would ask, why are we reducing the cap, especially giving the emphasis on continuing ministerial education? How many ministers, do we have a rough idea, might lose out if they're, like me, at the limit of their saving up and starting to get now into planning for using study leave? And have we given any thought to how the church as a whole might be affected by those who are in the midst of, as we know, the presbytery mission planning process, might suddenly feel, don't want to lose out, take an additional 4 weeks study leave this year in addition to maybe a couple of weeks they've already planned to take so that they don't lose it. Can we really afford to take people out of regular business previously unexpected before the end of this year? And have we thought about phasing it in even just to 6 years next year and 5 years the year after?
I think one of the reasons that it was reduced was nobody was using it, storing it up for so long and using it that way, that people do tend to take their study leave on a fairly regular basis. So I think the feeling was no one was being disadvantaged by this. Sorry, what was that? That was true pre-COVID, I'm hearing. But we feel no one is being disadvantaged because no one was storing it up for so long. We would just encourage ministers to use it. It's there, and please do use it.
Thank you, David. Amanda Macquarie and would Sumit Harrison please stand by?
Thank you, Moderator. Amanda Macquarie, 300. I have some questions for the convener on Section 8 in general as convener of a Presbytery mission planning team. We are trying to be imaginative and creative in our planning, but we're concerned by the current cap on MDS posts at 120, given that the convener has just confirmed that all of these posts are already filled, and in fact there are 130 MDS currently in post. I understand that the cap is to be lifted, but is there any indication as to when that might be? That's the first one. Do you want to answer each one in turn, or shall I just give you them all?
We only have 103 full-time equivalent MDS, so there is still plenty capacity. But within presbytery planning, we have said 660, but it's up to presbyteries to determine for themselves how they would like that ministry allocation, whether it is full-time ministers of Word and Sacrament or whether it is MDS. So any cap really should not be affecting you. So I would encourage you to plan as you were planning, as you're hoping to plan.
Thank you. What mechanisms are in place at the moment or will be in place going forward to ensure a fair distribution of these MDS posts initially across the whole church? Or will it be a case of first come, first served?
It's just, as I said, it is a choice. So within your presbytery planning, if it's MDS posts that are what you need to fulfil your presbytery mission plan, then these posts will be filled.
Thank you. I, for one, and a number of my colleagues, I know, have indicated that they appreciated the conference, which the Forum ran earlier in the year for mission planning team conveners. At the moment, we in presbytery planning teams are each busy in our own places, working in isolation, it seems. And it feels a little as though we're all working at inventing the same wheel, albeit in different ways. It would be good to know how the guidance is being interpreted in other places and to share good practice. And so I wonder, does the Forum have any further plans to gather conveners or mission planning teams together at any point over the next few months to share processes, ideas and good practice?
I've been told that there is a meeting in June, so that's just next month. We are trying to encourage a sharing of good practice, and certainly the facilitators are holding meetings with presbyteries and with groups of presbyteries, again, to try to encourage that sharing, to try to, so you're encouraging one another as you work on your plans together. But June for the next meeting of mission planners. Thank you.
Okay, Sumit, and could Stuart Gowdy please stand by?
Good afternoon, Moderator. 251 Harrison. I'm here. I've got two questions, one is, when we have shortage of anything, especially in UK, we always look different countries. Have you ever considered recruiting ministers from the other countries? Might be a wrong question or naive question here, but I don't see this question ever come into the General Assembly or in our normal talks. I'm an Indian minister working with Methodist Church in India, resigned from there, and then moved to this country. And I am managing okay. I've learned how to say I and all right. I'm sure that's not enough, but I think I'm managing okay. So that's the first question, that why don't we try it? International ministers, those who are already ministers, and do some transition for them. I can trust me, I've got a lot of friends who will be happy to move to Scotland and take the call from God, because I think that's a paradigm shift now. There was a time when British missionaries went to India. I'm talking about India because I'm Indian, and they spread the mission in India. Now it's a time that we come over here and help this country to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. I hope you will agree. My second question, well, it's again, I'm doing it in favor because I've struggled a lot when in my journey. 2008, I moved to resign in my country and moved to this country, and I thought, well, this is a beautiful Christian country, and I'll be on my back to my pulpit ministry within few months. Well, let me tell you, it's a long, long journey for me. 2011, applied in and attended the vocation conference. Hardly any help was given to me, and I gave up. Almost gave up, but I'm like a dog with a bone. So I applied in 2015 again, and then I was put in on discernment conference. Though I was ordained and theologically trained, I was bachelor in divinity. It was tough journey, and then suddenly some team realized that what am I doing in this discernment process when I should be just familiarized and I should be in the church. Well, thank God, somebody hold my hand and helped me to be there, and I was inducted in 2020 in my first charge, and I'm very happy with it, no problem. However, I would like to say the question is, this vacancy process is a daunting process, and I would like you to make it a little easy and help people to, they can easily come into this post. That's what my question would be. Thank you so much. Bless you.
Okay, thank you very much for a series of questions. So we currently have 10 admissions candidates who are going through familiarisation in our country at this time. It has been difficult, obviously, with COVID. There have been a lot of restrictions on travel. We also have quite a long waiting list of those who are in the process. You'll have read in our report that we have streamlined the process as well for those coming in by admission, that the initial screening is being done online, so that saves the travel to Scotland for interviews, so that should simplify the process. We're at this in-between time as well, as you'll be aware. We have not put a cap on the number of folks we are taking in through admissions, but we're still at that in-between time where we have a lot of ministers still in charges. We're just waiting for this big change when we have our retirement cliff and we lose the large number we are anticipating. So we also have a very large cohort of probationers this year who are waiting for charges. So it is that kind of fine balancing act between making sure we don't have too many in the short term, but looking longer term when, yes, we will very definitely be assessing where we take candidates from and how many we take from overseas. But thank you for raising it. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. And Stuart from Malig, number 489.
Stuart Gowdy, number 489. Convener, I'd like to ask a question about section 2.3.4, in which the forum says that it asks the General Assembly to repeal the provisions contained in section 18, subsection 2 of the Parish Ministries Act. And I wonder if that has been enacted, and if not, where or when.
So that is an absolute, everyone's 75. Yeah. Yes, it is being enacted. It is part of our deliverance, the change to the Parish Ministries Act. What it basically means is that retirement age is now 75 for everyone. In the past, with different retirement ages, depending on when you were inducted into a charge, it meant there were different times when presbyteries could approach you to talk about the future. But having removed that and a standard 75 retirement age for all, that's where we are now. I hope that's helpful.
I don't see it in the deliverance.
It comes under section 6, appendix 3.
It says it's passing an act amending the terms of the Presbytery Mission Plan Act. It doesn't mention amending the terms of the Parish Ministry Act.
The amending act does amend the Parish Ministry Act.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move now to the deliverance. I know there's one or two wanting still to speak, but I feel we've given enough time to that so far. Do we receive the report? Number 2. Oh, Peter, it's just come up. Sorry. Yes, right. Sorry, it's just come up. Peter Johnson.
Johnston 422. Yes, I had put it in earlier on the list. I'm generally supportive of what is being proposed here, but there are just some things that are kind of rattling around in my mind. And thinking about in the report itself, sections 2.1.6 and 1.7 following, when you're talking about the capability procedure. And you're mentioning there St. Irenaeus, his words resound down through the centuries that the glory of God is a human being who is fully alive. Our hope and prayer is that our ministers will be fully alive, and so on. That's my idea of zombie church out the road. When we're thinking about capability here and thinking about some process by which we are monitoring one another and what we are doing, there's a concern in my mind about kind of where the level of this is going to be. And so, I mean, I know you're working towards this. I mean, are we talking about core competencies as a part of this, or is it more than that? And if we're talking about it being more than that, if we're using it, for instance, as it's saying in 2.1.6, as a mechanism by which adjustment could take place and moving people from post to post, and then it feels like it's more than just kind of core competencies. It may be about looking at particular giftings that would be deployed in one place over another place. And then when we're coming to gifting, well, that is a kind of different thing than just capability and competency in a job. And gifting is a hugely important part of ministry. And when we're thinking about gifting in ministry, sometimes those gifts that we have may not just fit neatly into core competencies or capabilities. But those are the things which individually, whatever they may be, energize us, give us the motivation to do some of the things that are core competencies or capabilities that otherwise are quite draining. And so there's there's quite a complex relationship of different things going on here. And I hope the forum will hear this in a supportive way to what's going on, that this is complicated and needs a lot of thought. Thank you. Thank you, Moderator.
I mean, absolutely, I would accept that 100%. And I mean, you're very welcome. Anyone is very welcome to, give us your thoughts as we take this work forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. 2. Three. 4. 5. Now we're going to move to an overture from the International Presbytery, and Reverend Derek Lawson will present it. Derek.
Thank you, Moderator. Derek Lawson, number 541. On behalf of the International Presbytery, I would present this overture, which is printed on pages 20 to 22 of the Order of Proceedings. I don't intend saying a great deal about it. I realise how time is constrained this afternoon, and frankly, this is a matter that's probably not of interest to anybody beyond the International Presbytery. However, this Act amends the International Presbytery Act of 2016, principally in connection with vacancy procedure, but also dealing with a few other things on the way by. I simply present the overture and move the deliverance. I'm happy to answer questions should any commissioner have them.
Derek, the conveners, you want to accept the overture?
Yeah, we're accepting the overture. Moderator, we welcome this overture, which is grounded in experience, and we're confident that it offers a better basis for introducing ministers into the international charges. On the advice of the solicitor, we welcome it subject to amending the proposed paragraph 1.2 in Schedule 2 of the Act to insert after denomination of origin the words "or where the minister is judicially suspended for a period of 6 months or more." And we thank members of the International Presbytery, the clerks and the Legal Questions Committee for the work that has gone into amending the International Presbytery Act.
I'm happy to agree that amendment, Moderator.
Excellent, because that's what's in the hub, Moderator.
Does the General Assembly receive the overture? And number 2, pass the Act amending the International Presbytery Act, Act 2, 2016, as amended, as set out in the appendix.
Yeah.
I'm going to clear online as well.
That's in this, what you moved. And a third line. So we've done 1 and 2.
1 and 2. Okay, thank you, Derek. Can we now move back?
Section 15 of the Assembly Trustees report.
Well, we're going to the Assembly Trustees, right? John?
You read the Assembly Trustees report on the hub.
Moderator, I don't intend to say anything directly to this. It's the deliverance that wasn't taken on Saturday. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay.
Section 15 of our report, Assembly Trustees report. I can read it if you want. Note the vision statement, which frames the discussion around the review of initial training for the Ministry of Word and Sacrament, Appendix D. Agree the principles for ministerial education and training outlined in Section 14 of the report, and authorise the Faith Nurture Forum to engage with academic providers and others as necessary in order to ensure the best possible infrastructure and curriculum for ministry formation. There's a proposed amendment in the name of the Reverend Professor Susan Hardman-Moore, which we are happy to accept, if the Assembly is happy to accept.
Thank you.
Are we happy then to accept 15 as amended?
So you understand what we've done?
Is that okay?
It'll be okay, Moderator, once we minute it.
Okay, can we return to the Faith Impact Forum report?
Nurture, I hope.
Faith Nurture, rather.
Faith Nurture Forum, please, now. Good. Good to go.
So we have a
Section
6.1. Is that right? A new 6.
No.
Says here.
Yeah.
Where's a new 6 going in? A new 6. 2 new 6s.
We delete that.
A new 7s. Up to 6s. The list in the hub is 6.
6 and then a new 7.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm going with what this is.
Right, you have to look at this. This is what they're seeing alive from there to the cut line to the conspiracy.
So 6 we had to change because it wasn't considered competent, which is why we put a new 6.
Moderator, we're going to, at the moment, if people are looking at the hub, although we're going to come to section 6 as in the print, we're going to add a new section which is labelled N61, which is the one that says, call the church to pray, recognising our complete dependence on God, the many problems, questions and issues raised through the church by the Presbytery mission planning process and the deep fears and anxieties that are being felt by people across the church, and instruct the forum to produce prayer resources to encourage and equip people to pray for the future well-being, peace and revival of the church. And this is the name of?
James Dewar.
This is Jim Dewar, wants to move this new section 6.
Okay, Jim, would you like to come and speak to it?
I'm not accepting this because it asks us to prepare resources.
Moderator, much as I would like to resist the temptation, I can't. Dewar 007. It has been my ambition for 40 years to come to the Assembly and be 007. Moderator, we've heard lots about management and planning in the Presbytery mission planning process, and we understand that that's necessary because we need to establish the process on a sound basis. And we've heard lots of responses to that and how that has been good and inspiring for some people, but it has also raised a whole pile of fears and anxieties for others. And so I want to add this deliverance because this is something that I haven't heard, calling people to pray for this process and to pray for the health and well-being of the church. You might say, being the church, this goes without saying, that we pray. Well, let it be said. Let it be said that the Just General Assembly calls the church to pray. We need to pray recognizing that we depend on God. We need to encourage the church as a whole to pray for the church throughout this time. And to help that to happen, let's not just say it, but let's give people the resources that will help them and encourage them to do it. And so I move that we call the church to pray, recognizing, as the clerk has read it, moderator, I move it. I haven't arranged a seconder, but I hope that it will be accepted with acclamation.
Stanley Cokie wants to speak to it. Where are you? Thank you. Live.
Moderator Stanley Okeke, 1, 2, 3. I want to support the motion put forward by James calling us to pray as a church. A church that is alive is a church that prays. The word, "Give me Scotland or I die," was birthed in the place of prayer. Mr. Moderator, you call us here every morning to pray because you understand the significance of prayer. And if it will please the court, I would suggest that we do not only stop where James stopped by calling us to pray, but also to appoint a prayer coordinator that we cut across not just the General Assembly, but our presbyteries, so that the church will be a church that prays. And perhaps the reason the radical change is ongoing is that God wants to revive the church, as been pointed by James, through prayers. So I support the motion that we pray and appoint a prayer coordinator. I move, Moderator.
Thank you, Stanley. Convener?
Moderator, it's a terrible thing to say. I'm going to resist this, and because there's also a new motion, a new Section 8 in the name of James Todd, again calling us to prayer and calling us to pray in our situation where we are, which is actually what's been asked for, I recognise, also by Jim Dewar. The bit I'm resisting of Jim Dewar's new section is the instruction to the forum to produce prayer resources. Prayer and resources, we feel, should be more contextual for where you are, for the issues that you are facing in your particular area. And we have many, many, many people who are well able to produce prayer resources. We have prayer promoters in many of our presbyteries. So, yes, we encourage prayer. But I would like to encourage more in Section 8 rather than Section 6, and encourage you all, yes, we must pray for our church at this time. I hope you're all doing it anyhow. We shouldn't be having to put sections in a deliverance, but I would resist 6, but I would accept 8.
Albert.
Can I suggest that you have all the resources for prayer? You want to join us every day. Sanctuary First has prayer every morning at 7 o'clock. Online, you're welcome to join us. And it's wonderful. It's growing. The numbers are growing. Alive people are coming to pray for our church. Every day, 7 o'clock, 7 to 10 past 7, join us for prayer. Or if you can't make it, you can look onto Facebook and you can join in with the other 300 people who have joined us at the end of that day. But if you can't make that, you can sign up for your daily prayer coming in from Sanctuary First, and your daily reflection, which is all funded and supported by Faith and Nurture. Now, why would you want more resources when it's already been supplied to you? And if you want more, there are videos, there are blogs, there are Bible readings that go back for years. There are 5,000 prayers on the website. This is your gift, or this is your work coming out of the Church of Scotland. So come on. Let's get real. Let's start praying. I want to see you all there tomorrow at 7 o'clock.
Albert, we have questions and comments, but not adverts.
Moderator, just following on from what Albert says, given that the Faith Nurture Forum is indeed producing prayer resources every morning through Sanctuary First, if that's an acceptable response, then yes, prayer resources are being created each day. We have staff who can help you. If you're needing help, we have the staff. But we would encourage you all to pray for your context. So, yeah, given what Albert has said, yes, we accept Jim Dewar's Section 6 with that understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Right, so we've moved to a different position here. So I was going to go to a vote, but simply to ask, do we accept 16.6.1? Do we accept it? Okay, is everyone okay online with that as well? Okay, we've got a section now 6.2. Add a new section 6 to instruct presbyteries to engage with the young adults within their boundaries as part of their mission planning process. And this is in the name of
Rebecca Reid.
Rebecca Reid.
Just say it now. Moderate. Happy to accept it.
Happy to accept.
Happy to accept.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that, Rebecca, if she's happy to accept?
Yeah, sure.
Or do you want... you can say something if you want.
I did have something prepared. I shouldn't take very long if that's okay. I'd quite like just for you to hear it.
Right.
Thank you, moderator. Rebecca Reid, number 625. So I'm proposing a new section 6, which reads, instruct presbyteries to engage with the young adults within their boundaries as part of their mission planning process. Rosie, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you, the forum and the staff, for all your continuing hard work on this report and all the other things that haven't been mentioned today. I would also like to thank the Intergenerational Church Task Group for their work and commitment to exploring the engagement and involvement of the under-40s age group within our church. Young adults, like many of you in this room, have big questions around our identity, belonging and purpose. I have found my answers within the Church of Scotland and in my faith in Jesus Christ. However, there are many young adults who have yet to find their place in the church, and I know many that long to feel like they belong and they have a purpose within it, being able to contribute to the ongoing mission of the church, which has sadly not been possible by all. Young adults long for the opportunity to participate in the works of the church, working alongside elders, ministers, and presbyteries. We don't want things simply being done for us, and we don't want to have to wait another 20 years before we're able to participate. We want to join with you now, to work alongside you now, to seek God discerning the way forward through this difficult time. So much of our calling as Christians is discipleship and fellowship, which can be said for all Christians, regardless of their age. I feel that as there is no longer a national youth platform within the Church of Scotland, the engagement of young adults must be achieved at local level and within our presbyteries. So my motion asks presbyteries to explore how they can engage with young adults within their bounds, and in particular, to enable them to be involved in the mission planning process, recognising that young adults have many gifts and insights that will be valuable as the church undergoes this reform. As mentioned yesterday during the ecumenical relations discussion, we need to seek unity, recognising that this does not mean seeking uniformity. Although we may be different in ages, we are united as brothers and sisters in Christ and by our faith in Lord Jesus Christ. So I urge this General Assembly to vote in favour of this motion, as it encourages the beginning of new intergenerational relationships and intergenerational collaboration within our church. Thank you. I have arranged a seconder. Thanks.
The convener has accepted this. Does the General Assembly accept this? Okay, thank you. We've passed on. We've moved past that. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Lon. We move on to the print now. You have an amendment to 6. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, Moderator, there is an amendment to 6 in the print because we were advised that what was in the print was not considered competent by the clerks and the procurator. So we are having to make an amendment. So we're removing kind of 4 lines of print, and then our new section 7 is the rewording that is considered competent. So
we are dispensing with 6 and moving to new 7?
So, no, 6 is now amended, and then there's a new section 7.
Yeah, so moderator, section 6 is amended to say that the amending act, with the section 3 of that's coming out.
Right.
And then there's a new section 7 to follow on from that. So I think we should agree the amendment to section 6 firstly, and then do 7.
Do we agree to the amendment?
Then 6
and then 6 as amended, right? So do we agree to the amendment for section 6?
Yeah, okay.
And then section 6 as amended. Thank you. Now we move on to a new 7 in the name of the convener. Convener.
As I say, this is just making making competent what was considered incompetent. As it's in the print, urge Kirk Sessions and presbyteries when planning the union of congregations to consider the numerical size and composition of the United Kirk Session, and also whether use might be made of fixed-term appointments, bearing in mind the efficient operation of that court. And I think the efficient operation, and that's the key phrase. I mean, obviously, if you are uniting a number of Kirk Sessions, there is a chance that there will be far too many people and it will be quite unwieldy. So it's keeping Kirk Sessions of a manageable size that's lying behind this. And it's an urge.
Okay. Are there any questions? Do we agree with the new 7? Accept it? Thank you. Now we're dealing, online. We're dealing with a new 8.1, and that's in the name of James Todd.
Jim Todd, 302. This is the first time in 40 years that I've ever endeavoured to speak at the Assembly, so I don't know whether I can be allowed a little bit of leeway in the timing.
No.
Maybe not.
No.
Moderator, I believe that we are more and more recognising that the long-term and serious unintended consequences to the measures that governments put in place to deal with the pandemic, especially the long lockdowns, something had to be done, but time may tell us that the measures were too drastic and that there has been unintended but immense damage to people's mental health and physical health and other problems as well. It seems to me that the implementation of the Presbytery Mission Plan that the General Assembly has approved may have similar unintended but drastic consequences for congregations. To be honest, yet in kindness, certain aspects of this plan seem to me to be spiritually suicidal. A much more measured comment by Doug Gay expresses it this way. This is from a recent comment, The Kirk in Crisis, with a subtitle, Caw Canny Kirk, but Caw Awa. He says, "My concern is that we have locked ourselves into a closed economy of scarcity, which is in danger of locking us into an accelerating pattern of institutional decline. In our honest and commendable attempt to face the music, we are now in danger of imposing on ourselves a cycle of cuts and restructuring, which is too severe and too far-reaching, and which will have irreversible consequences. My motion is to seek to resolve any controversial implementation to the Presbytery Mission Plan by strongly urging the congregations concerned to pray together corporately, as well as individual members praying, and to delay any, in brackets or in parentheses, forced implementation until the particular and personalised leading of the Spirit is realised in the particular situation. This praying together is something that we are already doing in our cluster of 6 congregations in the Larbert area. After the 1910 World Mission Conference, a devotional writer put this across. Quoting a Chinese missionary, he said, "Just in proportion to the extent the missionaries and the Chinese Christian readers yielded themselves to God and sought the power of the Holy Spirit, there was the blessing of God upon the churches." And my motion is to encourage corporate prayer together. On the train here, right in front of me, there was a poster that said, "Try praying." And it's easier than you think, it said, the poster. But sometimes prayer of this kind is harder than we think. And I pray that we will all get really to grips with praying together in a body corporately. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Well, we do have an amendment to this in the name of Eleanor McMahon, which it's already in the hub. It's labelled A83, and it's to add at the end and invite presbytery to consider using the resources of the interim and transition ministry team in these changing circumstances.
I think, Moderator, I made an error. It should be 8.1. It's a wee bit small in my iPad.
It's down here as 8.1. I can see it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, happy for me to speak to it, Moderator? Yeah.
Sorry?
Moderator, I think this just really highlights the work of the interim and transition ministry team, and within the report it's noted the interim ministry in particular is celebrating 25 years. The roots go back to the 1990s when a certain parish minister in Edinburgh took his sabbatical leave, no study leave in those days, to undertake research into ministry. And so, John Chalmers, Minister of Palmerston Place as he was, encountered the work of Speed Lees and the levels of conflict which have been an important part of conflict resolution resources, both in interim ministry and for Place for Hope. It was John and then George White, who was a convener of ministries at the time, who recognised that many ministers were leaving ministry early because of conflict situations. They were increasing, and so the roots of interim ministry were laid. Interim ministry plays a role in transforming the faithfulness of the church. It's a national team of interim and now transition ministers who are placed in different situations, different contexts, where there is focused intervention and working in places where there's change, challenge and conflict. I appreciate the written motion that is 8.1, but I feel it should be supplemented by the practical action of a team that are skilled to lead that. Thank you. My motion is seconded, or my amendment is seconded by my colleague in interim ministry, Sandra Black.
Thank you. Thank you. I wonder if I could ask the proposer of 8.1 what his mind is on that. I think that's the fairest way to deal with this.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
You're happy with that. Convener?
I'm happy with it. I was just a little concerned about something that was said when this was being introduced. So the print as it is in the text, I'm happy with. None of this will delay presbytery planning. 31st December 2022 is the date. And yes, we hope everything will be resolved by then, but we can't just keep kicking the can down the road. So yes, we urge the prayer, yes, we urge the use of interim and transition ministries, but there's no delaying built into this process. So with that...
So are you accepting 8.1 as amended?
Yes, I am. I'm just making sure everybody understands that I wasn't accepting what was said in the speech.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think in that case, can I ask then that does the Assembly accept 8.1 as amended? Thank you. We move on to 8.2, and this is in the name of Marjorie, Dr. Marjorie McLean. That's what it says. Is it not?
So this is NA2.
NA2 is Annika Marshall.
NA2, Annika Marshall.
Right. Sorry, Annika Marshall. N82, N2, sorry. On you go.
Hannah Marshall, 164. I am very concerned for the sizable group of probationers that are currently in the midst of their probation placements. There's more than 30. And the convener has already touched on this, that they are trying to support them as they face a very uncertain time. Normally they would start looking now and maybe even earlier and look and starting to apply from the summer when they've done 12-month reviews, and then have 3 months or so to find themselves a vacancy. As most of you will know, there's only, I think, 5 currently vacancies on the list. These will not be the only people looking for vacancies when there aren't any, because there are also 10 people in familiarisation having moved sometimes from different countries, lock, stock and barrel, and now have nothing to apply for when the clock is ticking on how long their familiarisation and their pay and possibly their housing is secure. And in addition to that, you will have people like myself who are in reviewable tenure with varying lengths still to run on their tenures, but knowing that these new presbytery plans are affect their reviews, whether we call them that or not, and whether they are or not. And again, they have nowhere to even just assure themselves in their mind that at least there's lots of vacancies they could potentially move to, because right now nobody knows. We do know there's likely loads of ministers retiring, but in the intermediate period of maybe the next 2 years, all that will do is make adjustments possible, and it will not necessarily create new and fresh vacancies for people to apply to. So I'm foreseeing a really big crunch, and it's already an anxious time for many of us, but it potentially could be a lot worse. So in my motion, I'm asking for full and frank figures so that perhaps people would be reassured to think when these vacancies might come back online, and also that it's not an impediment to people coming forward for training, because they can see that at some point there will be vacancies, as well as hopefully support for those all that are affected by this in the next couple of years or so. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any, I think I see a comment or a question from Pamela Kennedy, 87. Yes,
Thank you. Pamela Kennedy, 87. So, Moderator, I'd like to speak briefly in support of Hannika's motion and to provide some further context. As far as I'm aware, I am the only current probationer who is also a commissioner this year, so I feel a sense of weight in that. I would like to make the Assembly aware that this is indeed a very challenging time in experience, not only for probationers, but also for our families. My own circumstances are, I think, some of the most positive. I have had incredible support from my supervisor, from my presbytery clerk and my presbytery, and I have something exciting shorter term to move on to. I'm also delighted to say that it does feel like call, albeit shorter term, and not simply filling in gaps, as I think has been the fear of a number of us. However, there is still a sadness that I think is shared among my cohort that I'm not in the position, having just had my final review, to look for a charge. And I do sense an anxiety among my peers too, that there may be a bottleneck when charges do begin to be advertised. Especially though, I'd like to highlight the impact on families of probationers who have this uncertainty. Children who have been prepared to move house and school, as my own were, but now are not moving, but will at some point, but they don't know when. This is really difficult for them. I know the probationary cohort is far from the only grouping impacted by changes at the moment, but I think it's important that this voice be represented. Anything that can be done to alleviate concerns is greatly appreciated, and I'd like to encourage the Assembly to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Was it?
No,
right. Well, she's right to reply first.
Yeah, sure. Moderator, whilst I'm really sympathetic towards this...
Sorry, Rosie. I think that the proposer has right of reply first before you speak. Do you want to sum up?
Hanneke Marshall, 164. I have nothing else to add to that. I know in a way the motion doesn't ask for a lot, it just asks for figures. Really the intent is to raise the awareness and hopefully support across presbyteries and faith nurture for people in these situations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Moderator, I'm resisting in part because some of the figures are really hard for us to collate. I gave you a whole load of figures earlier about the number where we are at the April payroll. The thing we find really hard is to predict the number of retirals. They have been higher in this past year, far more than we had projected. And anecdotally, that's how we see it going, certainly in the short term. But it's really, really hard to put a figure on that. I can tell you that 10 calls by exception have been approved. So calls are coming through. And I would encourage presbyteries, your plan may not be complete, but if within that plan there is a vacant charge who are a part of your plan going forward, they can be given leave to call by exception through Presbytery Planning Implementation Group. So I would encourage presbyteries to do that. In terms of our probationers, yes, we are very concerned for those on probation, those who are doing familiarisation placement, and a lot has been put in place to make this difficult time hopefully a little easier for them, and to use it in a very positive way. Pamela spoke positively of the opportunity that she is being given within her setting. So just to make you aware, probationers have been guaranteed that they will, at the end of their probation, they will move on to level 1 of stipend. And then they have various options. They can remain within their probation placement, or they can seek to do something different within their presbytery or another presbytery. And that may be to take on locum work, it may be to do some kind of mission development, something quite exciting, using their gifts and skills, putting them to the service of a presbytery for up to 18 months. We have monthly meetings with all our probationers just to make sure we're keeping everybody in the loop, that we are encouraging and guiding everybody through this difficult time. And I know it's difficult, but please accept our assurance that we are looking after our probationers well, that we are making this difficult time a little easier, that they will not experience any hardship, it's not going to be more difficult than it would have been. It's a hard time in the life of the church, but as I say, I reject this new motion really because the figures are too hard for us to collate, but you got a feel for the numbers earlier.
We will move to vote then on 8.2. For and against the motion.
Yes, Moderator, we're voting to whether to add this to the deliverance. So 1 is for, 2 is against adding it, and online it's for and against, and the vote will soon be open.
The vote is open.
What is it?
10 seconds. And the vote is now closed.
For 201 and against 159, so 8 carries. Thank you.
We have a new 8.3, which is being proposed by Lorna Tunstall. Lorna.
Moderator, Tunstall 503. This motion is actually being proposed by Dr. Reverend Marjorie McLean, Commissioner number 525. However, Marjorie has had to go on to another engagement, so I am going to be speaking on her behalf. And rather than try and paraphrase Marjorie, because I don't think any of us would dare to ever do that, I am just going to read out her report in full. I should say that Marjorie actually starts...
I do understand that the convener is very happy to accept this, if this might expedite...
Well, if that saves us a few seconds, I would be very happy to go and sit back down.
Please do tell Marjorie we've moved on. Yeah. Has it been seconded? I think it has been. I think I saw something in the print.
I'm happy to second it as well.
Yeah.
Not that I'm new.
That's seconded.
Moderator, we're happy to accept this. I mean, this does underpin the work of Presbytery Mission Planning, that each of our existing presbyteries gets their mission footprint in place, and then when you become part of something bigger, then that initial spread, that initial footprint is taken into account. And yes, we do respect this in Pimpig when we're doing our work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is the General Assembly happy to accept? And now we return to 8 in the print. Questions? Again, I would remind the commissioners that we're now at 4:30 p.m. I've had one birthday today. I hope not to spend another one today here. But this is important stuff, so please, again, it's important we hear what you've got to say. It's important that what you've got to say is quite to the point, as I'm sure it will be, Eleanor.
Thank you, Moderator. Eleanor McMahon, 102. Moderator, this refers to basically the medical assessments, not only in this deliverance, but in other deliverances in the appendix. And so it's a sort of cover-all. And I really just wanted the convener to comment. I had been in touch with, and I have had some answers back. But really, I think my question would be, is what would prohibit someone someone having been accepted through the processes from not being able to continue into their candidacy through a medical reason? What kind of criteria is that? Who makes that decision? Is it solely a medical decision, or does that come into the staffing or policy making, or is there a panel within Faith Nurture? And given those questions, could the convener assure the Assembly that this policy will be monitored? Thank you.
Thank you. Convener.
Eleanor, thank you that you did give us notice of this question. So can I just give you the, the answer as we have it? So the medical assessment is independent and confidential for all applicants for ministry. The process, which is medically led by qualified practitioners, can elicit information that we should be aware of in respect to the medical assessment for the anticipated role. This assists in identifying any issues that may require appropriate adjustments or support. There are, of course, protected characteristics in employment, which are also relevant to appointments in ministry, and all appropriate advice would be sought if there was anything arising that could potentially mean a decision for non-admission. And a decision would only be made by the forum when that full advice was available and any decisions appropriately monitored. And I understand from Leslie Stewart, who heads up this area of work, that to date this hasn't occurred, but in due course, were it to, then it would be up to the forum to make the decision. I hope that gives you some peace of mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the Assembly happy to agree number 8? Number 9. Assembly happy to approve? Thank you. Number 10. That's approved. Number 11.
Moderator, Barclay 188, I'd like to move a new section 12, if I may, and if I may read it, commend the Presbytery of Glasgow's commitment to recharging the eldership for the 21st...
Hang on a second, we've not approved number 11 yet.
Oh,
so
sorry, Moderator, I was just
but we appreciate your desire to move on quickly, so that's... if Edinburgh can say that to Glasgow. Right. Number 11, is that approved? And everyone's happy. Now, the speedy Dr. Barclay.
And I'll just start from the beginning and move even more quickly, Moderator. Thank you, Barclay 188. Commend the Presbytery of Glasgow's commitment to recharging the eldership for the 21st century and instruct the Forum to listen to and, where appropriate, to share and develop the outcomes of the Presbytery's conference held on 5th March 2022. If I might speak very briefly, Moderator, this past year, Glasgow Presbytery sought to capitalise on the fact both that Lord Wallace, the General Assembly Moderator, and Robert Hind, the Moderator of Glasgow Presbytery, were both elders. And so Presbytery held a conference in March, wonderfully, in person, just as restrictions were easing, where over 160 elders got together to be encouraged through conversations and to be challenged from a range of insightful speakers. The conference sought to encourage elders whom we believe to be the people who are in the right places to do the right things in as many local contexts as possible, and addresses from Lord Wallace and Robert Hind and those with expert insight helped sharpen conversations which, as I listened in, proved to be enormously encouraging. And so I simply wished to draw this exciting event to the Assembly's attention for being held in March this year. It didn't make the printed report, and I do hope the convener will be prepared to accept this new section. I hope, too, Moderator, that someone from Glasgow or elsewhere might be prepared to second it, and in doing so, that the convener might indicate a willingness to go forward together to encourage one another in service to advance the kingdom of Christ.
Excellent. Are there any questions? No comments? Convener.
Yeah, happy to accept, and it's with an apology because it did slip out of our report. It was supposed to be there, and the email then got lost in all the other emails. So I have apologised to the Presbytery of Glasgow. I do indeed commend them for their commitment and for their initiative. I can say that members of the Faith Nurture Forum were present and involved including a minister from Edinburgh. So, so happy to accept.
Thank you. General Assembly, happy to accept? Okay, thank you very much. That is approved. Back to 12 in the print. That's approved, and we pass on our best wishes to Professor Hardman-Moore and also to Alison Jack as she takes over. And thank you for all your work on behalf of our church. You're most welcome. Thank you. New 13. Right, so a new 13 and a new 14 coming in. So who's proposing this new 13? Jonathan Fleming.
Thank you, Moderator. Jonathan Fleming, 160. I'd like to propose two new sections as hopefully being displayed before the Assembly. In Section 13, instruct the Forum to take time to reflect on the lower than anticipated uptake of ordained local ministers who were to play a pivotal role in previous presbytery plans and report to the General Assembly of 2023. And then a new Section 14, which reads as here in new 14.2, instruct the Forum in conjunction with the Theological Forum, approved education partners and any other relevant committees to investigate the possibility of creating an accelerated training course similar or identical to the Church of England's Caleb Stream, which would allow elders within a congregation to be trained and subsequently authorised by presbytery to administer the sacraments within their own congregations and report to the General Assembly of 2023. I will try to keep this brief, Moderator, because I know that time is of the essence. I present these two additional sections as we prepare for what lies ahead under... Yes, Moderator?
Can somebody mute? Right. Oh, I've been dying to say that for a long time. Jonathan, is that seconded? Second. In your own time.
Present these two additional sections as we prepare for what lies ahead under the new Presbytery Mission Plan. Ordained local ministers and before that auxiliary ministers and readers and all ministries are a true blessing to our church, and in previous presbytery plans, ordained local minister allocations featured very heavily in the hope that a larger number would have come forward under the introduction of this stream. Sadly, this wasn't the case in some presbyteries, and I felt that it would be helpful to reflect on why this did not materialise. As the mission plan unfolds, and as part of my own presbytery mission plan task group, it is becoming clear that multiple charge unions across significant geographical areas highlight the urgent need to revisit the prospect of a training stream which allows elders to discern a call to administer the sacraments within their own congregation, following a time of training and assessment and subsequent presbytery oversight, very much in keeping with the rubric of commissioned local ministers as suggested by Doug Gay in Reforming the Kirk. With these comments, Moderator, I present these two proposed sections in my name, and I believe that I have a seconder.
You've been seconded. Is there any questions? Mr. Horsburgh.
Moderator, Horsburgh 573, Convener of Ecumenical Relations. I'm a corresponding member, so I'm not entering into debate at all. Just to say that if this is to be passed or accepted, it would be good if the Ecumenical Relations Committee could be mentioned in it, because we would have a role in this discussion if it goes ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? I'm seeing no further questions coming up. Convener?
Moderator, happy to accept the new 13 on ordained local ministry. In our report, we also highlight some of the changes that have been made to training for ordained local ministry to allow a greater flexibility. So hopefully that will make it a more attractive prospect for many people. So happy to accept 13. A little bit more concerned about the new 14. I like the tenor of it is fine, but I think we're putting a cart before the horse here, because there is work that was being done on the sacraments between Theological Forum and it was the Ministries Council, and I don't know who else. It was before my time, and I don't think that work ever came to any kind of conclusion, that it reached an impasse, and I think I'm right in saying stopped. Yes, so having had a quick email conversation with Theological Forum, I think we would need to do that piece of work first, so to resurrect. And Liam assures me that a lot of work had been done, so it's doing that bit of work first before we take it any further. Alongside that, the integrated training programme, which I spoke of earlier, will include a lot of training for elders in different aspects of ministry, so that is happening as well. But I don't think we're quite ready to accept 14, the new 14, as in the print.
To speak. I think before we come to voting on the matter, I'm sorry, Mr. Rennie, I think the convener has just closed the debate. So can I put number 13, the new 13, to the General Assembly? Do you approve? Number 14, sorry, number 14. We're coming back to 13 in the print once we get to the 14. Moving them together, but the convener is accepting one part and not the other.
Yes, Moderator, the convener has accepted 13 and the Assembly has now accepted the new 13. The N14.2 text in the hub is being resisted by the convener, therefore the Assembly needs to vote on it in the usual fashion.
I think the Assembly's mind is maybe to move to the vote now.
Yes, I think so.
I think the Assembly, the convener has actually closed the, unless this is a point of order. Yeah, I think we've closed it. 13 or 14 were being taken together. So. Okay, it's a question for clarification, so I'll take that very quickly. Thank you.
Apologies, Moderator and Convener. Ross Blackman, 247. That piece of work did conclude. There was not Commission Assembly, I've forgotten the right title for it, but the conclusion that came out of that just, I think, 3 years ago was to refuse that particular piece of work, the idea of sacraments being delegated or conducted by elders and others. So I just wanted to clarify that, that's all.
Thank you, that's helpful. I think what is before the Assembly now is the new 14, and we have to vote on this. Clark?
Yes, just Moderator, this is N14.2 in the hub, which is to add a new section, instruct the Forum in conjunction with Theological Forum, approved education partners and any other relevant committees, for Mr Hosper's benefit, to investigate the possibility of creating an accelerated training course similar or identical to the Church of England's Caleb Stream, which will allow elders within a congregation to be trained and subsequently authorised by Presbytery to administer the sacraments within their own congregations and report to General Assembly of 2023. We would vote for and against, so number 1 is for and against is 2.
Just before we vote, I've just had an extra bit of information just to follow on from Ross Blackman's comment. That seemingly following the impasse, as it were, and the refusal to allow, it was remitted then to the Theological Forum and to Mission and Discipleship and to Ministries to look at that work again and see how we could take it forward. So that bit of work's probably still pending.
Okay, thank you for that, Convener, but I still think we're very close to voting.
Yeah.
Vice Convener?
The vote is now open.
David, can you read? 'Cause they produced all the video sources.
10 seconds. And the vote is closed.
There voted for the new 14, 167, against 160. It therefore carries. We move to 13 in the print. That approved. Thank you. 14 in the print.
The new 14.
The new 14, beg your pardon. New 14, 1. Shaughnessy.
Moderator Shorus Orr 466. I recognise that I'm on the younger end of the spectrum of those gathered here. In fact, when I started my ministry 5 years ago, I joked with the younger members of our congregation that in an effort to look older, it took me 20 minutes in the morning to glue my beard on. This got me a little bit in trouble when that week's Messy Church, a load of children glued crepe paper to their faces. My retirement date now currently is 2068. To give a bit of perspective for that, that's 53 years after Marty McFly and Doc Brown went back to the future. But currently the future that I'll be in at that point is not looking as exciting as hoverboards, as we all know. The reason we're seeing this steep decline is something of great concern, and I believe it's not because we don't have enough money, it's not because we don't have enough ministers, it's not because we don't have well-equipped spaces in the right places. All those things are good. Fundamentally, we're facing this decline because we're not good at making new disciples. Somewhere along the line, many churches have forgotten, or perhaps never knew or had the confidence in the first place, what it means to make new disciples. And all these plans and visions that we're crafting at the moment will mean nothing shortly unless we rediscover this fundamental part of our church. Because we have plenty of money. We have thousands of buildings. We have hundreds of staff. We're the best resourced church in the country. But each of you ask yourselves this: when's the last time you saw a new Christian in your church? And if that takes you more than a few seconds to think, that's a very worrying sign. The figures around professions of faith provide some really worrying figures. However, we do have a lot of hope. We do have a lot of vision. There is, however, this huge gulf between the vision and the strategy and the promises of money and new communities and new ministries. And actually, how do churches do that? I'm a simple guy. My congregation would agree. And I believe that real life stories can play a huge part. That's why Jesus told so many stories. He preached with pictures. And so my motion is to humbly suggest that we commission a video resource showing really engaging videos, telling the stories of churches that are getting discipleship right, new discipleship, because we all need role models. Churches need role models. And we do have some amazing congregations that are doing fantastic work, whose stories have not been told in depth. We've got creative and imaginative rural ministries. We've got thriving down churches, unique pioneer ministries, and fantastic city churches. So let us hear these stories, find these stories that are similar to the context that we're in, and then just copy them. Give it a go. Learn from them. Be inspired by them. And so, with that, I move the motion. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you. Can I check if that's been seconded?
It has been seconded.
It's been seconded. Thank you. Convener is not prepared to accept. Are there questions or comments?
Thank you, Moderator. Johnny Clipston, 419. I just wanted, after hearing that it wasn't prepared to be accepted, to make a comment in support of Shorris. Because of his beard, I'm not sure where I am in ages with him, but fairly similar. I really enjoyed our moderator's worship this morning, and one of the things he picked up on was the Luke's version of the story of what's often known as the talents. For a long time now, I've been convicted by the conclusion of that story in Matthew's Gospel, which is, what you have will be taken away from you and given to someone who will be faithful. I think that where we're at just now in the Church of Scotland is a place of rebuke, which requires repentance and an accepting of responsibility. And I think this suggestion from Shorris is an absolutely excellent way to give positive encouragement to what can we do to arrest the decline in the Church of Scotland, because disciples make more disciples. So I commend Shorris's motion to the Assembly.
Thank you for that. Before the convener comes, I believe Mr. Orr has the right, very briefly, to respond.
Moderator, if I may, could I hear from the convener first? Because I had spoken...
No, you've got to speak, then the convener, I'm afraid.
OK, I'll have to try and preempt then. Or 466. I had spoken to the convener prior to this, and I was under the, obviously, the misunderstanding that this might be something the forum would be very open to. It seems like an absolute no-brainer. If we're talking about spending millions on new worshiping communities and new initiatives, it seems a very straightforward thing to give us a real, tangible resource that churches can look to and say, well, that's a church like mine. They're doing really well. Let's try and look like that, as we do with our own role models in life. It's almost like a discipleship culture for churches instead of just people. There's no point launching new things if the churches we have don't know what the next step is. And spreading us even thinner is not going to help unless we get this right. As I say, by 2068, it'll be me and maybe Johnny and a few others with just huge parishes and nobody there. I don't want that. Let's learn from the stories of how Church of Scotland have really got it right and just do it. In a lot of cases, it's going to be better than what we're doing already. What have we got to lose at this point? So I think it would be, I'm interested to hear what the convener says. I might even be getting this wrong. It might be just a suggestion for something better. Thank you,
Thank you very much, Mr. Orr. Now, convener.
Moderator, yes, we did have a conversation yesterday, which meant I went and did my homework. So the first thing to say is that we have various networks of good practice and peer support already in place, covering areas like pioneering, children's ministry, youth and families work, new ways of worship. And these are all resources that we have already that could be tapped into. We're just a little concerned of, commissioning a video series. Let me tell you about some other resources that we have. And if I can go back to what the moderator said this morning in his sermon, he talked about that very simple invitation. Would you come to church with me? If any of you have ever heard Michael Harvey speak about Back to Church Sunday, that's what it's all about. The other thing, and we've got a deliverance, just a section coming just in a minute, the Acorn Initiative, very similar, a simple way of making disciples, asking others to join in. So I'm reluctant to accept it because I think there's actually a lot of really good stuff out there already. And also, I'm just being reminded from my table here, contextualising is really important as well. When we spoke yesterday, I did mention Seeds for Growth. And I'm assuming that what will happen when Seeds for Growth is up and running is that then case studies will be put together. That's what happened with Go For It. There were regular updates on the projects that were supported, the good news stories, the best practice. So let's just wait for Seeds of Growth to get up and running, and I'm sure that that will be part of what is done with them. So I'm just saying lots of resources are there, and please do share with one another. Don't keep it to yourself. But I'm just resisting having to make a series of videos.
Thank you, Convener. Clerk, we move to a vote.
Yes, Moderator, there's a new section in the name of Sharasaw, and you vote for and against, 1 for, 2 against in the hall, and 4 and against online, and Susan will tell us when the vote is open.
The vote is open now. Thank you. Ten seconds. And the vote is closed.
Declare for the new section were 184, against 159. The section carries. Thank you. We move to number 14 in the print. Is that agreed? Thank you. I'm just waiting for the... Yes, that's approved now. 15 in the print. That's agreed. Yes, thank you. We've got a new 16 in the name of Stuart Gowdy. And the convener is willing to accept, Mr. Gowdy, if that helps you.
Moderator and convener, thank you for already speaking in favour of my motion, which is to urge congregations to adopt a simple ACORN initiative, which you'll find in section 15.1.1, to help members join with others following God on mission. The other 4 mission initiatives in section 15 all depend on the congregation or Kirk session securing support from Faith Nurture staff to apply that initiative in their congregation. ACORN can be adopted and started by any congregation or group of people needing only support and advice from other ACORN groups, of which there are many. No training is needed, and it's such a simple spiritual and missional practice that anyone can be involved. I commend it to every congregation in the country.
Thank you very much indeed. Is the General Assembly willing to approve? Thank you. We have another new 16 in the name of the Reverend Alistair Cumming. And the convener is willing to accept. So Mr. Cumming's not wishing to speak. Maybe, do we need to have it read out? It's there in the print, folks can read it.
Yes, it's just for the record, the audio record we keep, Moderator. So is that a new section 16? Congratulate the congregation of Guernsey St Andrews in the Grange and Jersey St Columba's as they celebrate the 50th anniversary of being Church of Scotland congregations.
General Assembly, I'm sure, happy to approve.
I'm also happy to say, Moderator, that I'm going to Guernsey a week on Sunday, so I'll bring this congratulations to them.
So that's been approved, yes?
Yes.
Good. We have another new 16 in the name of the Reverend Mike Binks. And the convener is not...
Mike Binks, 530. Moderator, the members of the congregations in the Church of Scotland in Corby, who actually find 7 o'clock a little too early, meet with some friends for prayer every morning on Zoom at 9. So if commissioners oversleep and miss Albert's gathering, they're welcome to search out Corby St Ninians and join our small group. At the end of the gathering, we finish with a recording of a hymn, hoping that the words and the tune and the message will ring in our ears throughout the day. And recently we've been working through CH4 hymn by hymn. We didn't start at hymn 1, but with the Christ Risen section. And we've been surprised by the number of hymns in our hymn book that are not available either as a recording on the likes of Apple Music or even performances on YouTube. If the forum take on my proposal, they will provide a resource that will make a real impact in the way we can make music available for small groups and online, and make large tracts of the hymn book useful for the first time for many. The endeavour itself should be self-funding, as income from individual purchases of the various tracks start to feed back into the system. I propose my motion, Moderator, but I haven't arranged a seconder.
Is it seconded? It's seconded. Convener's not prepared to accept. Are there any questions? Yes, point of order, Mr. Rennie.
Moderator, only 2-3 years ago, we had a discussion at General Assembly about the fact that often when people bring well-meaning deliverances to the Assembly seeking good things, a series of videos or investigation of Calab, and now we have video resources. All of these things have resource implications for a forum, which I might say, because of the Presbytery mission planning, is absolutely hard-pressed. Its staff are hard-pressed. And we agreed as an Assembly we would have a measure of discipline about bringing deliverances, and not just bringing deliverances that ask for this bit here, this bit there, because they all add up to a big resource implication. I haven't seen any of that discipline in our decisions today. And I'd like to ask a question of the Assembly trustees who brought this discipline and the need for it to bear a few years ago, because I think this is now the third thing the forum are being asked to resource.
Thank you. Dr. Chalmers has appeared on my screen, and he's appearing over there too. So, Dr. Chalmers.
Thank you, Chalmers 333. I think I may regret not having spoken earlier this afternoon. I was trying to be disciplined about coming to this microphone. But I am alarmed at the way in which new work has been generated today by one motion or another throughout the afternoon. And Scott Rennie is absolutely right. Every single one of these things means resource, and more than anything else, it needs the resource of people. For instance, we've just approved that we're going to make a series of videos. And I think the convener was absolutely right about the fact that there's resource all over the church that we're not using, and you want more. And actually, videos may not be the way forward. Instagram, posts, TikTok, there are better ways of getting our message out there instead of making up work as we go along. And we're getting to the point today where we're going to look at the D10 report and the way in which the Faith Action Programme becomes a joined-up way of integrating the church's work. And really, we can't tolerate going forward finding that we come to a General Assembly or one afternoon when people are just feeling a little bit tired or jaded, and adding more and more and more to the palette, when in fact we're in a situation where we have to be extremely focused on what we need to do as a church. So I think Scott Rennie has made a very good point. I don't know that we can turn back the clock on what has been agreed this afternoon, but we really shouldn't be inventing work in this way.
Mr. Orr. Yes.
Moderator, Orr 466. First of all, I want to say that I am totally in favour of somebody suggesting something, being absolutely happy to put their name on the line to help with it. I'm not trying to add more work to the forum. I'm trying to suggest something that I think will be infinitely useful to the whole church. I resist the point of order that this is adding too much work, or what Mr. Chalmers was saying there about this somehow detracting or spreading ourselves too thin. There's so much that we've been discussing and will continue to discuss that will be totally irrelevant if we don't actually make new disciples. It's actually very simple. This is what I'm saying. The forecast for these figures of what our church is going to turn into will be, as John spoke about on Friday in his very pressing report, that we'll just end up handing the keys to someone else.
We're not revisiting your vote. So are you speaking on this new proposal?
No, this is a point of order that I'm resisting the point of order that
I don't think this is order. This sounds like debate to me. So if you could resume your seat. I know there is somebody else wishing to speak. Rosemary Hoskins.
Rosemary Hoskins, 306. To the gentleman from Corby, as far as I'm aware, CH4 is available on CD or CD-ROM. I'm not sure of the difference. And he should be able to access that. Thank you.
Convener.
I thank Scott Rennie and John Chalmers for their intervention. Yeah, we do not have the capacity to do this. And we have an existing resource. About 10 years ago, the Mission Discipleship Council undertook what was a substantial project and which cost around £20,000, not to mention the staff hours. And that was to provide the sample recordings of all of the hymns in our hymn book. And it is one of the most popular parts of the Church of Scotland website, music.churchofscotland.org.uk. So we have that. I'm also really aware that during lockdown, so many resources were created in so many different places, and there was a sharing of these resources. So let's continue that sharing of resources, but please do not make this something for the Faith Nurture Forum to do, because we cannot afford it. As one of my folks said earlier, it would be like recording 82 albums. You know, it's that size of work. So make use of the host of resources that are out there. Make use of Sanctuary First. Make use of, talk to your neighbouring congregations. Find out what they were doing. But there is so much resource out there, so please use it.
Thank you. I think we proceed to the vote. Clark?
Just very simply, Moderator, to add the new section, people press 1 for adding it, 2 to not add it, and then 4 and against on the hub. And Susan will tell us about the vote.
The vote is now open. Ten seconds. And the vote is closed.
There voted for 34, against 293. It's not agreed. Could I remind the General Assembly, as we've heard from two of our commissioners, Standing Order 56 is the one that you should be looking at when you're possibly thinking about asking for new work which has to be funded to be done. So I advise commissioners to bear that in mind for the rest of the Assembly. Thank you. We have a new 16.4. Dave Slater.
Thanks, Moderator. Dave Slater, 213. Delighted that I don't believe there are any cost implications to this amendment.
Are you seconded? Seconded. Is the convener willing to accept? Yes. The convener is willing to accept, so a brief comment and then we can move on.
Just to help the forum in their mission to let everybody know about this, I believe they've tried to let us know through a number of channels, but note the changes made to the cap on saving up study leave allowances and encourage all ministers to use or continue to use the scheme for their continuing ministerial education. As I indicated, I'm a little bit behind in starting to use mine, which you start to accrue after the 5-year mark, but I am very much convinced of its helpfulness, necessity, encouragement in continuing to develop as a minister, and I have started using mine this year. I'm also delighted by some of the wee conversations I've had that seem to suggest that if anyone else is in my position that might lose out, they might be willing to come and go a bit on the date if you've got something planned for this year or into next year. So I move my amendment. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you. Any questions? Anne Knox.
Anne Knox, 163, great niece through marriage. I'm sorry, I didn't sleep very well last night, so I may have fallen asleep for 2 seconds, but when Jonathan brought 13 and 14 together, we were to go back to part of 13.
No,
did we do that?
Approved.
It was approved. I did fall asleep. My apologies.
Well, there's so many things I could say, but it's just not gentlemanly for an old man like me now. So is the General Assembly happy to approve? Agreed. Thank you. We now move to the supplementary report. Yeah. So, Section 1, receive the supplementary report. Section 2, agreed. And a new 3, Alison Swindells. And the convener is happy to accept.
Thank you. I would like to speak to it just for a couple of minutes. Could I ask maybe the clerk to read out the motion? Thank you.
And could I also check that that's been seconded?
Sorry. Yes, it has been seconded. Alistair Bruce, 441, and I'm Alison Swindells, 446.
Thank you. Maybe if the clerk could read it out.
So this is to add a new Section 3, notwithstanding any past errors, instruct the Selection Committee to appoint 3 persons to mediate a meeting with the Gordon Presbytery of Gordon, Faith Nurture Forum and the Assembly Trustees to 1. Verify, according to the principles applied across all other presbyteries, the appropriate weighting and allocation of ministries to Gordon Presbytery. 2, in the light of the outcome of Section 1 above, assist, if required, the Presbytery of Gordon to complete their Presbytery mission plan. And 3, advise where appropriate on opportunities that might exist in A, local ecumenical collaboration, B, the shape of ministry allocation within the proposed new presbytery, and C, initiatives which might qualify for funding under the newly created Seeds for Growth, and report the outcome of their work to the General Assembly of 2023.
Thank you. Moderator, I understand that both conveners of Faith Nurture Forum and Assembly Trustees are willing to accept the motion, and I'd just simply like to say that it has been an anxious time for everyone since the change in ministry weighting for Gordon Presbytery was discovered.
Sometimes it seems as if presbytery mission planning is all about numbers. It's not. We are a well-staffed presbytery, blessed with a strong and supportive contingent of younger ministers and MDS staff. When I see how they work together, striving to make things work in challenging times, helping their congregations to navigate change, then I have hope for the future of the church. But we have to be careful not to snuff out their enthusiasm and commitment by placing them and their families under undue anxiety. We all need to support one another better through this time. As I said on Saturday, as a presbytery, we support the need for mission planning. We also recognise that mistakes can be and are made. And today I want to thank the convener of Faith Nurture Forum for their apology and their willingness to move with the Assembly trustees to meet with us to try and resolve this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I see the name of Alistair Bruce. No, I'm seeing Alistair Bruce on my screen. I'm not seeing Eleanor McMahon's name at all. Point of order? You've still not put your name in, I don't think.
No. Okay, fine, fine.
But if we can activate that microphone, that would be helpful. Eleanor.
Oh, there we are. Eleanor McMahon, 102, convener of the selection committee, moderator. Well, it looks as if I've got a role to do tomorrow, but I need clarification about the deliverance, because the role of assessment can be a wee bit different from the role of facilitation and of the work. And so we're looking for the 3 people who will do that oversight, who will then go on to do that work of mediation and facilitation.
Clark.
Well, very kind of you to think I know what this is about, moderator, but I'm not proposing this. If I was the person proposing this, I would suggest that they could assist by finding mediation if that was what was needed.
I think we could do that as a selection committee, but I'd be a little wary of trying to find 3 people who do everything.
Yeah. Moderator, can I just say, what we need within these 3 people are people who will understand weightings and the process behind weightings. So if that really freaks you out, you're not suitable for selection. Okay, so people who have that understanding, a kind of good mathematical mind with figures, etc., and then to move on to work with the presbytery thereafter, and also with PIMPIG and with others. So, but it's just initially to do that verification of figures.
Thank you for that information. That's not closing the debate. Alistair Bruce.
Alistair Bruce, 441. Moderator, thank you. I was just really going to speak in favour of what Alison has spoken about, and to thank the Faith Nurture Forum for all of their work that they've done, but I'll leave it at that and just let you crack on.
Thank you. And Sarah Brown.
417, Sarah Brown. Can the convener confirm that the weightings are now solely worked out on population density and that no other factors are brought into consideration?
Convener.
Yep. Yes, population density was what was used to calculate the figures that are in the print today. So we have tables of population densities that show you from the most dense to the least, and that is what informs our thinking and our decision making. So yes.
Gordon Kennedy.
Moderator, Gordon Kennedy, number 12, just taking a trip. What I'm wanting to ask about is timescales here. I'm in general supportive, but number 1 and number 2 would presumably need to be completed by 31st December this year. What about number 3? It seems to me that requires quite a bit of local knowledge on the part of the 3 people selected to serve on this group or special commissioner panel or whatever. What timescale is there for number 3 to be completed? Is it also 31st December this year?
Convener, if you can answer that.
Well, I can just say that the Presbytery Mission Plan must be in by the 31st of December 2022. So, yes, that work must be done by then. Obviously, there's some work can be done thereafter, but the mission plan must be in by 31st December 2022, just like everybody else.
Any further questions or comments? I think the Assembly is ready to vote. Assembly happy to approve this. New section 3. Thank you. And section 3 in the print. Yes, I'm going with on the screen that's in front of me. It's not on the hub, I'm hearing.
Apologies, Alistair, it seems to have gone. Oh, just give me a second.
It appears in the report section.
Why not this?
It should have been withdrawn. No, we're on something different. Yes.
No.
It's on the side.
So, there's a change of motion here. Section 3 in the supplementary.
Okay, it would be helpful if this could appear on the screen.
Could Alistair read it?
Here we have it now, the counter motion. Instruct the selection committee to appoint a committee of 5 people to examine the accuracy and veracity of the weightings used for the purpose of allocating ministries set out in Appendix 1 and to ensure that no presbytery has been prejudiced by the weightings and allocation of ministries based on them, and report to the General Assembly of 2023. Is that seconded? Seconded. Convener, are you just accepting or not? No, not accepting. Alistair.
Moderator, Alistair Cumming, 531. May I at the outset acknowledge the work that's been done by the Forum, and in particular Vice Convener Karen Campbell and Staff Member Angus Matheson, as they've sought to facilitate the implementation of the Presbytery mission plans. Thank you both. Moderator, I'm reminded of the Morecambe and Wise sketch with Andre Previn, when Eric Morecambe is sitting at the piano and states that he can play all the notes, just not in the right order. I feel a bit like that as we read and hear of the weightings and ministry allocation. The numbers are there, but maybe not in the right order. Moderator, the ministry allocation numbers were dropped into last year's General Assembly without consultation or explanation of the weighting. The Assembly was asked to accept these numbers, yet when challenged it was found that 3 presbyteries had been wrongly allocated numbers. No adjustment was made at the time, and the subsequent adjustment took 1 minister away from 1 presbytery and added 0.5 to the other 2. No consultation or weightings took place to my knowledge. We now find that one of those presbyteries, Annan and Eskdale, was miscalculated and has now been further adjusted. How do we know that the recalculation didn't prejudice any other presbytery? There is, moderator, a perception of non-transparency. 2 presbyteries received no weighting. How can that be? Again, no explanation and the perception of a lack of transparency. We've just heard just now of the Presbytery of Gordon. Again, until today, there was no transparency. The supplementary report, the convener acknowledges further errors, but says no presbytery has been prejudiced. We don't know for sure, and there is no transparency. There is a perception held by some that the figures has been mistakenly applied. While this is a perception, there is always a risk that perception becomes reality. Presbytery planning is underpinned by the weightings and the ministry numbers. It's vital that everyone across the church has confidence in those numbers. And it's for that reason I have proposed setting up a committee to examine the weightings and the process of allocating ministry numbers. The committee can hear from all parties, including presbyteries who feel that they may have been prejudiced, and can draw conclusions based on the facts. Once the committee reports, we can have full confidence in the numbers. We might still not be happy at the outcome, but at least we know it's been transparent and fair, and we can put to bed the perceptions and be confident of the reality. Moderator, in maths exams in the dim and distant past, I was always told to show the workings and I might get some extra marks, even if you get the final answer wrong. Moderator, I move this counter motion, but before doing so, for the reassurance of the convener of the selection committee, it would be acceptable for the 3 there to make up part of the 5, so you'd only be looking for a further 2. So I move the counter motion and give the forum the opportunity to show the workings and get the answers right.
Thank you for that. Now, questions and comments. Gordon Kennedy.
Moderator, Gordon Kennedy, number 12. I want to ask why this is a counter motion. If we don't pass number 3 and note the weightings, what will this committee appointed check the accuracy of? Surely this is simply a new section to come after number 3. Because if number 3 means note, only note, then that's what would be checked by this appointed committee. And I'm not sure I understand why it's a counter motion.
Thank you for that. I'll defer to the clerks on this one. We've got Dr. Chalmers wanting to...
No, I don't want to speak on this particular
right. Clark.
Moderator, in my role as interpreter of what they actually mean when they say note, I think they mean agree. There's no point in it if it doesn't mean agree. This is them. Sorry, Rosie. This is the forum.
This is them.
It's late in the day. This is the forum trying to regularise and put into print the weightings applied to each presbytery and to make a definitive statement of these. And that's why it's a counter motion. If Alistair Cumming is suggesting that he is wary of the calculating process and wants somebody else to look at it, then we shouldn't agree these weightings. These are a restatement of weightings that we've seen before and a carry forward. It's a clarification exercise. But if the Assembly notes them, i.e. agrees them, then what point the committee that Alistair wants to have set up? And so we have decided to say that this is a counter motion to 3.
Moderator, I wonder if in the light of that helpful comment, I could move a very simple amendment to number 3 in the print to change the word note to the word agree. And that would make it clear what we're doing in number 3 in the print and why the counter motion is a counter motion.
Convener, would you be happy with that amendment?
I'm happy with that amendment, yes.
Yes, she's happy. Is the Assembly happy with that amendment? So it seems to me what we've got is the motion in the print and a counter motion. Therefore, it seems to me we're asking the clerk to tell us how we're going to vote next.
So, Moderator, number 3 in the print with the amendment thus agreed, and I think agreed by the Assembly, is agree the weightings applied to each presbytery for the purpose of allocating ministries set out in Appendix 1. As an alternative to that, there's Alistair Cummings' counter motion, instruct the selection committee to appoint a committee of 5 people to examine the accuracy and variety of weightings used for the purpose of allocating ministries set out in Appendix 1. and to ensure that no presbytery has been prejudiced by the weightings and allocation of ministries based on them, and report to the General Assembly of 2023. In the voting process this time, button 1 is the motion. That's the thing, it's the name of the committee, so that's agree the weightings as in the print. And button 2 is the counter motion in the name of Alistair Cumming, which is to instruct the selection committee to appoint a committee of 5 people. Online, you'll have buttons that do that. So motion, counter motion. This is not a for and against. So for the motion in the print, 2 for the counter motion for Mr. Cumming.
We haven't heard from the convener yet, and I want to speak against the counter motion.
Okay, I just wanted to get some clarification.
Well, there's no point hearing from the convener then, is there?
Not yet.
Clarification on the voting process, so just for people to bear that in mind. But I don't know if Mr. Cummings wants to come back with anything.
Well, let's
No.
hear what it is.
Convener.
No, I want to speak against the counter motion very briefly. I want to say 22 years ago, I think it was, and it's been referred to already today under the Church Without Walls report, Presbyterianism at that time was described as institutional mistrust. And I think that this particular motion sets up the very idea that we just don't trust one another, as if the Forum and even the Ministries' Council before have been operating on some sort of secret mission to remove the rights of presbyteries. We've not been working like that at all. We've been working with a very hard sum, and we've been applying as best we can some principles to it. And the fact of the matter is that out of 40-odd presbyteries when this process started, and 39 now, there's been 1 or 2 areas where there's had to be adjustment of one minister, one ministry or another here and there. We're nearly there with it. We have to resolve an issue that Gordon Presbytery has now raised, and this is a better way to resolve it than to bring it to this assembly in this manner. But to take it further and say that the whole system now needs to be verified, I think is mistrust with spades and in spades, and we don't need it. So I hope the assembly will resist it.
Now, Peter Johnson, I think, is wishing to speak. And then I would propose Mr. Cumming to speak, and then the convener to close the debate.
Johnston 422. Moderator, I'd like to speak in favour of the counter motion, and for very similar reasons to those just expressed, that this is about trust, and it's about acknowledging that we trust the processes that are there. Now, as a member of Aberdeen and Shetland Presbytery, we went through that, uncertainty of realising that a mistake had been made, and mistakes happen, errors happen. We know that. I'm very thankful that that has been worked through, but it did cause trust problems, and so having this look at the system just to make sure we're all absolutely certain this is right, I feel is beneficial for us because exactly of the issue of trust. We have to trust our processes are working well. Thank you.
Mr. Cummings.
Alistair Cumming, 531. Moderator, Mr. Johnson put it quite eloquently. This isn't a question of mistrust. This is a question of just make sure that we've got it right, and then let's move on. And whether my own presbytery or other presbyteries are unhappy, if it's clarified that that's where we are, that's where we are. Now let's move on, but let's move on with the certainty that there are no mistakes. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you. And convener, finally.
Thank you for all these contributions. It was mentioned that 2 presbyteries do not have weightings. That's correct, because the weightings are based on population density. And so the Presbytery of England, in fact, the charges in England, and that's where we had our little bit of difficulty last year. The charges of England and those in the International Presbytery are not weighted because we cannot base these on population density. I can assure the Assembly these figures have been looked at and looked at again. We have Fiona Tweedy, who is our church statistician, who is doing the background work behind all this. We have all the paperwork. I have slides, if I could bore you with the slides, but we're having a committee of 3 already looking at this the work certainly around Gordon Presbytery, and that will encompass the whole of the waiting system. You can't look at one in isolation. And so that work is going to be done. And I would just ask the General Assembly to put trust in that system and just let that pan out. And as I've been reminded by my colleagues in Pimpig, the 31st of December 2022 is still the date when plans must be in.
Thank you, Convener. I think the Assembly is ready to vote. 1 is for what is in the print, 2 is for the counter motion. The Vice Convener will tell us when we're ready.
And I think, are we there? Yes. As far as I can see, sorry, I think they are both open.
So the voting is open.
I've been told they are. Ten seconds. The voting is now closed.
So for the motion, 211. For the counter motion, 105. The motion stands. Thank you. I'm just going to take a moment here just to find out where we are in the proceedings. Now, to correct the process and to make sure we're absolutely on track, 3, as in the print, still has to be approved by the Assembly. We did the motion, counter motion, we approved the 3, then there's a new 4, then we'll be taking the deliverance as a whole. So the new 3 is not the new 3, the 3 as in the print. Assembly are prepared to agree. Thank you. Now, number 4. New section 4. Who is speaking to this? The convener.
Convener, this is just, it was section 7 of our main deliverance, except we had to update it in the light of the new table, which appears at the end of the supplementary report. So it's just, it moved it from section 3 of the main deliverance to the end of the deliverance that goes with the supplementary report.
Thank you. Is the Assembly happy to approve? The deliverance as a whole. Mrs. Frew and team, well done. Take your seat.